Welcome to another episode of Thailand Truth Talks.
For decades, foreigners have arrived in Thailand, believing they'd found the ultimate loophole: marry a Thai citizen and put the land in the wife's name, or register it under a son or daughter born from the marriage. Some even think they've outsmarted the law by using their child as the owner, not realizing that if the child is under 20, a Thai guardian, almost always the Thai spouse, must be appointed, making the arrangement no different than putting the title in the spouse's name. Many have been ignorant of Thailand's nominee laws. Others have been willfully blind, convinced the rules wouldn't be enforced. But that illusion is ending. The Thai government is now systematically enforcing nominee laws, and thousands of expats face criminal exposure, while their spouses, relatives, or trusted friends can be treated as accomplices. All it takes is one thing: your money. Here's the brutal truth. Under Thai law, a foreigner who pays for land or construction held in someone else's name is likely to be treated as the real owner. If investigators conclude the Thai owner could not have earned the millions of baht used, you may face criminal penalties, permanent deportation, and the forfeiture of everything you put into the property.
Imagine this. You're living your dream retirement in paradise. Crystal blue waters, golden beaches, a beautiful home that you thought was legally yours. Then one morning, everything comes crashing down. Government officials storm your property. Your Thai partner looks away in shame. And you realize the house of cards you've been living in is about to collapse. This isn't fiction. This is happening right now across Thailand as the government launches an unprecedented crackdown on foreign nominee ownership schemes. And if you're an expat living in Thailand or thinking about moving there, what you're about to hear could save you from losing everything. I'm talking about a seismic shift that's sending shockwaves through expat communities from Bangkok to Phuket. The Thai cabinet has ordered a comprehensive review of foreigner nominee ownership arrangements, and they're not playing games. Recent raids have exposed thousands of foreigners who thought they were cleverly navigating Thai property laws, only to discover they were walking straight into a legal minefield. Today, we're going to follow the story of one man whose dream retirement became a nightmare. Dive deep into the government's aggressive new enforcement tactics, and most importantly, show you exactly how to protect yourself from becoming the next victim. But first, let me ask you something. How far would you go to own your piece of paradise? And what would you do if you discovered it was all built on a lie? Meets Frank Thompson. Not his real name, but his story is all too real. 3 years ago, Frank, a 62-year-old retired engineer from England, thought he had it all figured out. After decades of dreaming about tropical retirement, he'd found the perfect property in Phuket, a stunning villa just minutes from the beach, complete with a pool, garden, and ocean views that took his breath away. There was just one problem. As a foreigner, Frank couldn't legally own land in Thailand, but his Thai girlfriend, Kiki, had a solution that seemed almost too good to be true. Kiki told me it was completely normal, Frank recalls, his voice heavy with regret. She said her brother-in-law was a lawyer, that thousands of expats did this. All we had to do was put the property in her name, and I could live there as long as I wanted. She even showed me other foreigners in the area who had done the same thing. The setup seemed straightforward. Frank would provide the money, 8.5 million baht, roughly $240,000 US, and Kiki would hold the title as his nominee. They drew up what appeared to be legitimate contracts, including a 30-year lease agreement and a will ensuring Frank would inherit the property if anything happened to Kiki. For 2.5 years, life was perfect. Frank renovated the villa, hosted friends from the UK, and felt like he'd finally achieved his retirement dreams. He was living proof that, with a little creativity, anyone could own property in Thailand. He had no idea that he was about to become the poster child for everything that could go wrong with nominee arrangements. For Frank, those first 2.5 years in Phuket felt like a long exhale after a lifetime of hard work. His days began with the hum of cicadas in the garden and the gentle crash of waves drifting through open windows. The villa, whitewashed walls, dark teak trim, and an infinity pool that caught the morning sun like a mirror, wasn't just a home. It was the physical embodiment of decades of dreaming. He quickly became part of the local rhythm. The coconut seller down the road knew his name. The noodle shop owner saved his favorite table. Evenings often ended with him sitting on the terrace, watching fishing boats dot the horizon as Kiki watered orchids along the fence line. I'd walk down the beach every morning, maybe grab a coffee from the same cafe. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how I'll spend the rest of my life. I honestly never imagined anything could go wrong. Yet, in hindsight, there were moments, small, almost forgettable details, that hint at the storm to come. He noticed Kiki never seemed particularly stressed about money, even though she didn't have a steady income. Friends sometimes joked about foreigner-friendly ownership tricks and putting it in her name, like everyone else does. One British acquaintance told him over beers, "Mate, the paperwork's just a formality. You've got the lease and the will. It's bulletproof." Frank didn't question it. Why would he? Around him were other couples, European men and Thai partners, living in similar arrangements without a hint of trouble. The property itself was everything an overseas retiree could want. The pool overlooked a garden lined with frangipani trees. Inside, polished wood floors reflected the sunlight in a way that made the air feel warmer, even on cloudy days. A small library was tucked into one corner, filled with the travel memoirs and engineering journals Frank had collected over the years. Weekends were reserved for exploring nearby islands, hosting barbecues for visiting friends from England, and taking Kiki to new restaurants that blended Thai flavors with European touches. He felt secure, anchored. But beneath that calm surface, the first cracks in his dream had already formed. There's a reason many tragedies begin in moments of peace. The calm before the storm is when we stop asking questions, and when trouble finds us. It was 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in March of 2024 when Frank's world came crashing down. He was having his usual breakfast on the terrace when he heard vehicles pulling into his driveway. Not one, but 4 cars, including an official government SUV with tinted windows. At first, I thought maybe it was just some kind of routine inspection, Frank remembers. But when I saw the uniform, Land Department officials, Department of Business Development officers, even immigration police, I knew something was seriously wrong. The lead official, a stern woman from the Phuket Land Department, presented Frank with a document written entirely in Thai. Through a translator, He learned that his property was under investigation for violations of the Foreign Business Act and suspected nominee arrangements. What happened next was like something out of a legal thriller. The officials began photographing everything: the property documents, bank transfer records, even Frank's passport and visa stamps. They interviewed the neighbors, asking pointed questions about who really lived in the house and who had paid for the renovations. But the most devastating moment came when they brought in Kiki for questioning. "I'll never forget the look on her face," Frank says. "She couldn't even look at me." When they asked her directly who had provided the money for the property, she just told them the truth, all of it. Under pressure from the authorities, Kiki admitted that Frank had provided all the funds for the purchase and that she was merely holding the property as his nominee. She revealed the details about their arrangement that Frank thought would never come to light, including the fact that she had never made a single payment toward the property or its maintenance. The investigation revealed a textbook nominee scheme: a foreign national providing all the funds for a property purchase, while a Thai national held legal title with no genuine ownership interest. It was exactly the type of arrangement that Thailand's new enforcement regime was designed to target. To understand what happened to Frank, we need to look at the bigger picture. Thailand's crackdown on nominee ownership isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a coordinated government response to what officials see as a widespread abuse of foreign ownership laws. Kun Supachai Jutamas, a former Land Department official who now works as a legal consultant, explains the government's perspective. For decades, we've seen foreigners circumventing our laws through nominee arrangements. These schemes undermine the intent of our foreign ownership restrictions and create unfair advantages in the property market. The numbers are staggering. According to government estimates, thousands of properties across Thailand may be held through illegal nominee arrangements, representing billions of baht in potentially fraudulent transactions. The cabinet's response has been swift and decisive. Recent amendments to the Foreign Business Act have expanded the definition of nominee transactions and increased penalties dramatically. Foreigners found guilty of using nominee arrangements now face fines of up to 1 million baht, deportation, and permanent blacklisting from Thailand. Thai nationals who participate as nominees can face similar fines plus potential criminal charges. But it's not just about the money. It's about sending a message. The government wants to make it clear that these schemes will no longer be tolerated. Kun Supachai explains. They're conducting nationwide reviews of property transfers involving foreigners, using sophisticated data analysis to identify suspicious patterns. The Department of Business Development has been particularly aggressive in its enforcement efforts. They're cross-referencing property ownership records with bank transfer data, visa histories, and even social media posts to build cases against suspected nominees. Immigration authorities are also getting involved, flagging foreigners who may be violating ownership laws and potentially revoking visas for those found guilty of nominee arrangements. Back in Phuket, Frank was about to discover just how sophisticated the government's investigation had become. The officials weren't just looking at his property. They had been building a comprehensive case for months. They had everything. Frank recalls with a mixture of amazement and horror. Bank records showing my transfers from the UK. Photos of me at the property renovation sites. Even WhatsApp messages between me and Kiki discussing property improvements. They have been watching for months. The investigation revealed the classic red flags that authorities now use to identify nominee arrangements. All funds for the property purchase came from foreign sources. The Thai nominee had no independent income sufficient to afford the property. The foreign national was making all decisions about property use and improvement. Bank records show a pattern of the foreigner funding ongoing expenses. Witness testimony indicated the foreigner was a true beneficial owner. But perhaps most damaging was the discovery of Frank's own documentation. In his eagerness to protect his investment, he had kept detailed records of his property expenses, renovation costs, and even written communications referring to my house and my property. Attorney Nafat Suksamai, who specializes in foreign investment law, explains why these cases are often so clear-cut. Foreigners typically leave extensive evidence trails because they want to document their investments for tax and financial planning purposes. But this same documentation becomes the prosecution's strongest evidence in nominee cases. The legal framework is surprisingly comprehensive. The Foreign Business Act defines a nominee transaction as any arrangement where a Thai national holds property for the benefit of a foreign national who provides the consideration. The law doesn't require criminal intent. Even good faith arrangements can violate the statute. More concerning for expats, the law places the burden of proof on the defendant. If authorities can show that a foreigner provided funds for a property held by a Thai national, it's up to the defendant to prove the arrangement was legitimate. For Frank, this burden of proof would be impossible to meet. The first 48 hours after the raid were a blur. Frank barely slept. The villa, once his sanctuary, now felt like a crime scene. He kept glancing toward the driveway, half expecting more officials to appear. He called a brother-in-law who'd originally helped with the paperwork. No answer. He left messages for a lawyer recommended by another expat. Still nothing. Even Kiki had grown distant. Her usual warmth was replaced by short, clipped text messages. Busy today. We'll call later. She never did. The officials hadn't confiscated his passport yet, but the unspoken threat was there. His visa renewal was due in a few months, and he couldn't shake the thought. What if they deny it? In these cases, timing is everything, explains attorney Nafat Suksamai. If a foreigner can restructure the arrangements into a legal form before formal charges, sometimes they can avoid the worst penalties. But that window closes fast, often in days, not weeks. Desperate for clarity, Frank visited the local land office himself, hoping to check the title records. A young clerk looked at the documents, frowned, and disappeared into a back room. Minutes later, a senior official emerged, politely suggesting Frank wait for the investigation to conclude before making further inquiries. It was the bureaucratic equivalent of a locked door. That night, he walked through the villa in silence. Every room felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were closing in. The pool, once a shimmering slice of paradise, reflected only the cold glow of the security lights. He spent hours rereading the lease agreement and the will, looking for clauses, any clause that might protect him. But the language was vague. Worse, most of it was in Thai, a language he still only half understood despite years in the country. On his desk sat a neat stack of receipts, renovation invoices, and bank transfer slips, all proof of his financial contribution. For years, they had reassured him. Now they felt like a noose tightening around his neck. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was already cornered. The more I tried to prove I had the rights to the house, the more I was proving to them I was the true owner. I was walking straight into their hands. In those sleepless nights, Frank's thoughts turned dark. He imagined losing everything, not just the house, but his place in Thailand. The idea of leaving the country under threat of deportation felt like a public humiliation he wasn't sure he could face. By the morning of the third day, when the summons to the immigration office arrived, Frank was already running on fear and adrenaline. The real confrontation was about to begin. The moment of truth came 3 days after the initial investigation when Frank was summoned to the Phuket immigration office. What he thought would be a routine interview turned into a 6-hour ordeal that would change his life forever. They had me in a small room with fluorescent lights and no air conditioning. Frank remembers. There were 3 officials, one from immigration, one from the land department, and a translator. They went through every detail of my property purchase, my relationship with Kiki, my finances, everything. The questioning was methodical and relentless. Officials wanted to know, how did you meet Kiki? Who suggested the nominee arrangement? Did you understand Thai law prohibited foreign land ownership? Why didn't you use legal alternatives like leasehold arrangements? Did anyone advise you this arrangement might be illegal? Frank's answers only made things worse. He admitted he knew about foreign ownership restrictions, but had been told by local expats and even some Thai lawyers that nominee arrangements were common and acceptable. He revealed that he had specifically sought out this structure to get around the foreign ownership ban. But the most devastating moment came when they presented him with a confession statement already prepared in Thai. Through the translator, Frank learned that Kiki had already signed a document, admitting she had acted as his nominee and accepting responsibility for the illegal arrangement. She had thrown me under the bus to save herself, Frank says bitterly. The woman I trusted with everything had already confessed and was cooperating fully with the authorities. The immigration official was blunt. Frank had 30 days to dispose of the property and settle all legal issues, or face deportation and a potential lifetime ban from Thailand. The land department would be initiating proceedings to void the property title, and the Department of Business Development was considering additional penalties. Frank walked out of that office knowing his dream retirement was over. What followed was a nightmare that Frank describes as the darkest period of his life. Not only was he facing the loss of his home and life savings, but the emotional toll was devastating. I had to call my daughter in London and explain that her inheritance was gone, Frank says, his voice breaking. I had to tell my friends that everything I'd been bragging about for 3 years was illegal. The shame was almost worse than the financial loss. The practical challenges were overwhelming. Frank had to find emergency accommodation while trying to sell a property that was now legally compromised. Potential buyers were scared off by the nominee arrangement, and those willing to purchase offered significantly below market value. His relationship with Kiki was destroyed. What had started as a loving partnership based on trust became a bitter legal battle over responsibility and blame. Frank learned that Kiki had been advised by her own lawyer to cooperate fully with authorities, leaving him completely isolated. Dr. Lisa Michaels, a counselor who works with expat communities in Thailand, explains the psychological impact. These cases often involve a double betrayal, first by the system they thought they understood, and then by the person they trusted most. The combination of financial loss and personal betrayal can be devastating. Frank's case illustrates a troubling pattern in nominee prosecutions. While the law treats both parties as equally culpable, in practice, Thai nominees who cooperate with authorities often face lighter penalties than their foreign counterparts. The system almost incentivizes Thai nominees to abandon their foreign partners, Dr. Michaels explained. This creates an additional layer of trauma for foreigners who lose not just their property, but their most important relationship in Thailand. While Frank's story was unfolding in Phuket, similar cases were emerging across Thailand. The government's crackdown was revealing the massive scale of nominee arrangements and the sophistication of some schemes. Kun Pontai Thanakit, a prominent Bangkok attorney who has represented both sides in nominee cases, provides crucial context. What many foreigners don't understand is that nominee arrangements have always been illegal under Thai law. What's changed is the government's willingness and ability to enforce these laws systematically. The legal framework is more complex than most expats realize. The Foreign Business Act doesn't just prohibit nominee arrangements. It creates criminal liability for both parties. Penalties can include fines up to 1 million baht for each violation, deportation and blacklisting for foreign nationals, criminal charges for Thai nationals who serve as nominees, forfeiture of property without compensation, permanent immigration consequences. But the law also includes some surprising provisions that many expats discover too late. For example, properties acquired through nominee arrangements can be seized even if the foreign national was unaware the arrangement was illegal. The law focuses on the structure of the transaction, not the intent of the parties. I've seen cases where foreigners genuinely believed their arrangement were legal because they had been advised by Thai lawyers or government officials, Kun Pontai explains. But ignorance of the law is not a defense. And these foreigners still face the same penalties as those who knowingly violated the restrictions. Recent amendments have made enforcement even more aggressive. The Department of Business Development now has authority to investigate nominee arrangements proactively, without waiting for complaints or reports. They're using data analytics to identify suspicious property transfers and can freeze assets during investigations. Immigration authorities have also expanded their cooperation with other agencies. Foreigners found guilty of nominee arrangements don't just lose their property. They often lose their right to remain in Thailand permanently. That was the end of part 1. Please stay tuned for the second part of the Thai nominee structure.